This is the controversial part. I'm going to sell Aubameyang. Welcome back to the 12th Man. I'm your host, Danny Volker, and today we're going to be talking about Arsenal Football Club. We're going to take a look at what's going wrong at Arsenal in recent years, and we're going to try and attempt to rebuild the club and bring them back to challenging for the top four with a view to them progressing towards a title challenge. So I think the first thing for us to do is to allocate ourselves a transfer budget. So to do this accurately, I'm going to take an average net spend for the last 5 years. So over the last 5 years, Arsenal have a gross transfer spend of 443.1 million and have raised 194.2 million in sales. So this gives us a net spend of 249 million over 5 seasons. This gives us an average transfer budget of 49.8 million to spend. So this is what we're going to be working with in order to try and rebuild Arsenal, plus a percentage that we bring in from player sales. Now, if I'm an owner at Arsenal, I'm looking to emulate those glory days of the late 90s and the early 2000s under Arsene Wenger. You look at the likes of Henry, Bergkamp, Vieira, Pires, Emmanuel Petit, Tony Adams, and the list goes on. They have the perfect balance of leadership, flair and passion, which led them to 3 Premier League titles, 4 FA Cups, 4 Community Shields and a runner-up spot in the Champions League final. Arsenal are a long way from those glory days, but it's now our job to try and rebuild. So we know we've got around 50 million to spend, but our first task is arguably the most important task that we've got, and I think that's bringing in a new manager. For me, I'm not a fan of an inexperienced manager like Arteta, but at the same time, I'm not going to get a Jurgen Klopp or a Guardiola with how things are going at Arsenal at the minute. Now, if you listen to my previous podcast, you'll know that I'm not going to be making a call to Sol Campbell to lead the charge. Instead, for me and my Arsenal challenge, there's only one man on my mind. Now, obviously, the aim of this is to try and keep it realistic. I'm not going to be announcing the appointment of Pep Guardiola, and I'm not going to be revealing a new look front three of Messi, Lewandowski and Mbappe. I think it's important to point out that I'll be keeping this as realistic as possible. So that being said, my manager would be Gianpiero Gasperini. For anyone not sure who he is, he's the current Atalanta manager. He's got an eye for young talent. He plays a high press attacking formation. Just a couple of the names that he's brought through from young players and turned them into top quality players. There's Andreas Conte, Frank Kessie, who have both been sold on to AC Milan, Caldara and Spinazzola, who were sold to Juventus, Brian Cristante of Roma. But I think the biggest success story of Gasperini's ability to enhance talent is Alejandro Gomez. So this is part of the reason Gasperini is my manager. He can work with players like Saka, Maitland-Niles, Eddie Nketiah, Reece Nelson, and he can develop them into top-class players. See, Gasperini doesn't play the stereotypical Italian way of football. He doesn't play that defence first, attack second sort of tactic, like the likes of Conte play and the likes of Allegri play. He's got a much more attacking mindset. So he plays with a 3-4-3 formation. This has guided Atlanta to a third place finish in Serie A in 2019. So this is the first time that they've qualified for the Champions League in their 111-year history. Gasperini is a manager who he relies on his front three to work with socks off with a high tempo, close down defenders, kind of like in the way that Jurgen Klopp does with Firmino, Salah and Mane. So that being said, if we can't defend, then we can't win games. And defending isn't really a trait that Arsenal have got at the minute. They're not very good at defending. So now my manager's in place, I need to try and get a leader in the back line. I think it would be silly to go out and buy a player with no Premier League experience. It's going to take a few months for him to adjust to the English culture, to the pace of the Premier League. And currently what Arsenal have got, we've got David Luiz, Mustafi, Rob Holding. They're still being shown up in the Premier League. And I just think they haven't got anyone there with with that experience, that passion, that leadership that is going to pull the defence together, talk to each other and try and keep them organised. The one name I'm looking at in defence, I'm looking at the job he's currently doing at Crystal Palace, and that is Gary Cahill. He would definitely shore up that defence. He's been a revelation at Palace. He was brilliant at Chelsea. I think Arsenal could probably pick him up for around 15 million. With his age, obviously I think he's probably got about 2 or 3 years left at the top level, but he's got that Premier League experience, he's got that international experience, and like I say, I think 2 or 3 years left at the top level will give Arsenal enough time to rebuild before replacing him. I believe he would be very interested in the job being done at Arsenal, taking part in a rebuild and being a key part of that. I think he would play in the middle of a three-man defence, and that just his presence alone is going to shore up the defence, and it's going to give a huge boost to what I think is a top-rated goalkeeper in Bernd Leno. He's won numerous trophies from his time at Chelsea, and it would also provide that much-needed winning mentality at Arsenal. I think it's very important to put the backbone of the squad in place to enable us to build creatively. So what I mean by that, if you look at Man City when they first had their takeover, yes, they went out and bought Robinho and they bought flair players like that, but the foundations were put in place with the signings that we made. So some of the first signings, they went on to buy Vincent Kompany, Gareth Barry, Nigel de Jong. They already had Richard Dunn at the club. Santa Cruz up top, they bought from Blackburn. And it was just about getting that spine in place. See, these players, it created a backbone to the club, which then allowed them in further transfer windows to go out and buy more creative players. And noticing a serious lack of talent in midfield, I would then look at bringing in a holding midfielder. The defence are going to need some much needed help that they haven't had for the last sort of 4 or 5 years with Arsenal, probably since the Gilberto Silva days. So I've got a 2-man shortlist for this position. The first man I would love to bring to a club, to any club, would love to have this player. He's a hot prospect, he's an up-and-coming young talent, and it's the 17-year-old Edouard Camavinga from Rennes in France. He's quick, he's great at passing, and most importantly, he's a tough tackler. I think if he was 5 years older, he would be my number one pick without a doubt. The reason he's not is because I think it's too much pressure to put on a 17-year-old, a foreign import, who he's then expected to play a huge part in the rebuilding of such a big football club. It's for that reason that my next signing for Arsenal would be 23-year-old Leicester City centre defensive midfielder Wilfred Ndidi. He's been with Leicester since 2017. With Kante departed to Chelsea, he's really sort of stepped up his game. He's quickly emerging as, in my opinion, one of the best CDMs in the world. What I like about him is he just gets as much satisfaction from breaking up an attack as a striker would get from scoring a goal. And as a CDM, that's a fantastic attribute to have. See, I like Guendouzi. I think he's got potential, but I think he likes to get forward and try and score them goals and try and create goals when that's not really his job. That's not what Arsenal need. I mean, I need a player who's happy to break up attacks and play a simple pass and let the more creative midfielders and attackers go out and do what they're paid to do. Like I say, Ndidi is very quick. It allows him to sort of catch. He can catch most players if he is found out of position, and just slow that opposition down, slow the attacks down, allow other players to get behind the ball and allow them to defend as a group, which they haven't done for a very long time. So let's talk about finances for Ndidi. I think it's probably looking at costing me the best part of my transfer budget. So we give ourselves 50 million. We've spent 15 million on Cahill, which leaves us 35 million to spend. I think we're looking at possibly between 30 and 40 million. So I'm going to sort of wipe out that budget. I'm going to have Ndidi and I'm going to say that's the end of my budget. Now, you may be forgiven for thinking that my transfers are complete. Well, you'd be wrong. I'm looking for a creative midfielder to play just behind my striker. So the way Gasperini plays his football, he has his striker, and then Alejandro Gomez, plays, it's sort of a left attacking midfield. So he plays with sort of two attacking midfielders, a left and a right, who then obviously find a way out to the wing and come inside. But it's more of an attacking midfield position than a winger. The player I'm looking at, I mean, ideally, I'd bring Alejandro Gomez to the club. I think he's a fantastic player. But I've used my finances. I haven't got finances to bring him in. So for this position, I'm getting in touch with Barcelona and I'm negotiating a loan deal for Philippe Coutinho. As a Liverpool fan, I'm truly aware of what this man is capable of and would look to build my squad around him. It's likely to cost me probably between 2 and 5 million in loan fees. But then at the same time, I'm going to insist on the clause to buy Coutinho after the first year. I'm hoping I could pick him up permanently for £60 million. I think that's a very fair price if I was to agree that price based on how Coutinho plays now as a player, where he is in his career as a player now. I think £60 million. I think Barcelona would snap our hands off at that. Like I say, being a Liverpool fan, I know Coutinho is going to bring me goals. He sort of had the team built around him at Liverpool, and that will give him the confidence, and he'll then provide that much needed creativity to break down defences, the same way that Alejandro Gomez does. Now, I hear you asking 60 million. Well, how can I afford that when I've spent my transfer budget? Well, I'm going to leave that for the minute. I will come back to that. But before we answer that question, I've still got one more signing that this is going to be a massive signing, and that signing is Thiago Silva from PSG. Now, Thiago Silva is a free agent from the end of this season. Despite being 35, he's still a top-class defender. Now, I know there's a little bit of risk there. He's been playing in the French league for the past sort of 8, 9, 10 years, which isn't up to the speed of the Premier League. But he's been playing Champions League. He's got the experience at international level. He's a brilliant defender, and in my opinion, despite being 35, he's still one of the best in the world. You look at Chiellini at Juventus, similar age. He's still doing it at Juventus. I also think Thiago Silva, when they were at PSG, he brought the best out of David Luiz. He's another leader, which obviously Arsenal is short of. And like I say, he's head and shoulders, for me, above anyone playing at the back line for Arsenal at the minute. He's got that authority, which will probably stop David Luiz playing like a complete and utter clown all the time. So yeah, I think that's something that could work. So obviously I've spent my budget of 50 million, just over to be fair, so I've gone slightly over that. I've brought in Cahill, Thiago Silva, Wilfred Ndidi and Coutinho. So back to the Coutinho deal now. How will I avoid to bring him in year 2? Well, obviously it's hard to plan for anything other than the here and now, if you get me. If I brought these players in, I don't know how the team will perform. I don't know. People might lose form and people might gain form and go up and down in value. But this is probably going to be the controversial part now. This is the controversial part. I'm going to sell Aubameyang. You heard that correct. I'm going to sell Aubameyang. And let me tell you why. Aubameyang, he's a great player, but he's in his 30s now. And he's a player that relies on pace, those quick bursts, and it's going to go soon. It happens to everyone. You've obviously Jamie Vardy's 35. He's still doing it. He's still chasing down them channels. But look at Michael Owen. I think by the time he was 28, he had those injuries and he couldn't come back from them. And even Michael Owen himself said that he felt like his prime was when he was 18. So with these type of players, you just never know when that's going to go. I think I will keep him for year 1, definitely keep him for year 1, because I need someone who's going to score me goals and I need time to rebuild my squad. But by the time year 2 comes, he's going to be 33 years old. I think it's time to cash in on him while his value is still high. And obviously anything that I bring in for Aubameyang, 60 million is going to go to the Coutinho deal. I'd like to bring him in permanently. And then I've got Lacazette. He becomes my main man. And Lacazette is a very adequate player for Arsenal. He's a brilliant player. He scores goals, and I think since Aubameyang came in, a lot of the sort of the praise has come away from Lacazette. because it's gone on to Aubameyang. But I think before Aubameyang joined Arsenal, Lacazette was doing brilliantly for Arsenal. That would allow another hot prospect, Martinelli, to get more game time. He'd be the backup to Lacazette. And like I say, Gasperini, he thrives on turning these young players into great players. And he would be allowed to do that with Martinelli without the pressure of Martinelli being the third selected striker. Eddie Nketiah as well. He's another one that could come in. So you've got options up front. So with the 50 million spent plus what's left of the Aubameyang sale, I have sort of 80 or so million to bring in probably another midfielder. I think that's where Arsenal are lacking, the short on midfielders. I like the sound of bringing Aaron Ramsey back to the club. Do you know what I mean? Let's get in touch with Juve, see what we want for Ramsey. Do you know what I mean? He's not getting much game time at Juve. We might be able to do the same sort of deal with Aaron Ramsey that we've just done with Coutinho, and bring him back on loan and with a fee to pay at the end of a loan deal. But yeah, I think it's essential to cash in on Aubameyang while his stock is still high. So let's have a quick recap on how the team looks after our transfer dealings within year one. So obviously our manager that we brought in is current Atalanta manager Gasperini. In the goals, we got a very good player in Bernd Leno. And then listen to this trio of centre-backs, on paper, this looks brilliant to me. You've got Gary Cahill, Thiago Silva and David Luiz. And with Silva and Cahill, you've got two people that as soon as Luiz starts clowning about, they're going to be on at him. Do you know what I mean? I think Luiz will sort of knuckle down and start to defend with those two guys at either side of him. Left midfield, I'm going for a young option of Bakary Saka, who obviously he's in the Arsenal team at the minute. I just think Gasperini he would turn him into an absolute superstar. Do you know what I mean? He's got the speed to get up and down the pitch. He's perfect for that side. And in the centre of midfield, I'm going, do you know what I mean? Bear in mind, this is year one. We got Wilfred Ndidi and Dani Ceballos. So you've got that defensive format there in the centre of midfield, which will then allow Dani Ceballos to be more expressive than what he's currently allowed to be doing at Arsenal at a minute. And that could bring out the best of him. Do you know what I mean? Dani Ceballos is a fantastic player as well. That's why he got his move to Real Madrid. On the right of midfield, this was a tough one for me. So obviously I'm looking at Pepe. Pepe, I think, is going to be a good winger in the Premier League. My only issue with Pepe is I'm playing with three centre-backs. Has Pepe got the discipline to track back when needed? I'm not sure. If that's not the case, obviously Maitland-Niles I know has got that, so he would be a starter. And obviously in year 2, year 3, he might be one, if he's not progressing the way that we'd have hoped, he might be one we're looking to replace. Then obviously, like I say, we're playing with two sort of centre attacking midfielders and one striker. And listen to this for a front three. We got Coutinho and Ozil behind Aubameyang. Do you know what I mean? Ozil, he's not getting... I think he's getting a lot of the brunt for the way Arsenal are at the minute, and it's purely based on the money they've paid for him and what he's earning salary-wise. Well, anybody who gets offered that money is going to take that money. Why wouldn't he take that money? He's still the same player. I just think there's not enough good players around Arsenal to do you know what I mean, for him to sort of shine. So yeah, we got Coutinho, Ozil and Aubameyang up front. So just looking at that, Leno, Luiz, Silva, Cahill, Saka, Ndidi, Ceballos, Pepe, Coutinho, Ozil, Aubameyang. I mean, I'm gonna be honest. That's how you rebuild Arsenal on a budget, and I'm actually really impressed with how that looks. I think we've built a top 4 team ready to get into the Champions League, probably within one season with that, as long as everyone gels. So let me know what you think, guys. Head over to Twitter and follow us at 12th Podcast, and we will see you next Thursday at 7 p.m. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week.